Welcome to the Tech Shift F9 podcast, where we talk about career transitions and pivots in the age of technology, with amazing guests who share their incredible career journeys, career hacks, and experiences. I am Maurizio Rafona, your host, and can't wait to get started. This week we have Tyson Batino, who joins us from beautiful Hokkaido, where he's Founder Global's resident mentor, as well as running his own mentoring and advisory businesses focused on tech executives. Tyson started in education, worked his way to a management position overseeing 150 full-time staff, to running startups, and now also providing gateway services for businesses interested in the Japan market. Tyson's podcast, Skill in Japan, is a must-hear English language podcast for the startup community in Japan. Hi, Tyson. Welcome to Tech Shift F9. Great having you on the show.
Hey, glad to be here.
Fabulous. You have a fairly unique career path, to say the least. Education seems to be a key common thread of many of your experiences, but I was wondering, are there other common threads and touch points along your career?
Yeah, so in my case, I kind of want to go into how the education became a part, but I actually went to university and I studied psychology because I was planning to become a psychotherapist because I wanted to help people. And when I came to Japan in 2004, you're either a country manager, recruiter, or headhunter, or you're an English teacher. So I came through Japan through English teaching and did that for 5 years. And then I became an HR manager for 150 people. And that was also in the education space. And so I think for me, a common theme is doing things that help other people. And because I didn't become a psychologist, I am now doing that through educating others. And I guess another common thread is, so I think you're going to mention my podcast, but which is for my goal is to help entrepreneurs who don't have access to good information, who don't have access to high paid consultants to grow their business in Japan. But in my previous company, I also created a website called BFF Tokyo and Japan Switch. We get about 60,000 monthly visitors who read our articles. And one of the themes there with BFF Tokyo was I was an HR manager. I've hired over 500 people. I've created recruitment systems. I advise other companies on recruitment. And what information could I provide job seekers that would not be on another site, because I'm one of the few people who have just a very deep insight into getting a job in Japan as a foreigner and knowing what's available. So, and it kind of comes back to my background coming from the Inaka or the super countryside of Hawaii. And I think my town has like maybe 1,000 people, but we don't have good access to information. And I've seen a lot of friends who have potential, but never really exercise it because there's just, at the time I grew up, there's a lack of role models, there's a lack of information. So those who know my podcast know of me in Japan. So that's kind of the motivation for, because people would ask, like, you haven't exited, so why are you spending all this time creating content for entrepreneurs? And it's like, because all the founders who have exited, they're mainly just angel investing and, let's say, investing in funds, and they're helping the companies with high potential. But there's no one there for really the people who need help to create their business. So I'm really trying to fulfill that gap in Japan.
I love that 0 to 1 focus that you have, like getting people off the first step, which is usually the hardest. And I really appreciate the fact you've come through with what you want to do, even though it's a different form that you probably thought back when you were, 18, 19 years old. And you've worked your way up to becoming a CEO. And I know it's a very open-ended question, but what do you believe were the critical skills and qualities that help you succeed in each of the role that you took on?
Awesome. So the company I'm most well known for is One Coin English, and which has over 200 employees in Tokyo. So I'm most well known for that, but I wasn't the CEO. I was in charge of maybe developing the service, HR, recruitment, management training. I created the subsidiary from scratch, scaled it, and ran it to, I think we had around maybe 20 or 30 employees when I stopped doing it. But in terms of what were the critical skills and qualities that helped me to, grow in each role, I think one unique thing that I have is that it was very easy for me to find mentors, like really, really easy. And I've been mentored by some really great and successful people. And the next question is like, so how do you get their attention? I think one of my qualities was that one is I think they could see my potential, like just how hungry I was to get information to succeed. The second one was when they would give me feedback, I would actually listen, I would take notes, and I would actually execute upon it and say like, thank you for that feedback. It really helped me with this challenge. And how would you tackle this situation? So I think one of the keys for me growing and scaling as someone who essentially doesn't have any money and can't pay, couldn't really afford to get support is to find mentors who would help me and really just show them my potential and my acceleration, my growth curve to get their attention. So I think that was a big help. And I could think of our five mentors who've all helped me greatly in different areas. And it's kind of my time to pay the way back. The other one was my ability to learn new things as well. So, for example, I was HR manager or HR director, recruitment, managing training, building the curriculum for our English schools, and also like just the customer service and developing those systems. I really was really good at those areas. But when I was a board member for my own company, because we've scaled to the point where we needed those meetings, I was really lacking on the financial understanding and also the marketing and sales aspects. Because my focus until now, working as a corporate HR manager and now as running the HR director for my own company, my focus was too internally. Like I would just focus purely on the staff.
Right.
And so the CEO gave me the feedback. It's like, you got to learn finance. I tried to learn it. I learned a little bit of it, but that passive knowledge wasn't enough. And also like really understanding like customer acquisition and how hard it is, and then being able to explain that internally. I was never able to explain it internally until I did it myself. So yeah, so I think, but my willingness to do it and my interest in it, I showed signs of improvement in those areas, but I just needed, as opposed to education, I really needed experience. And so I think that willingness to learn and also appreciation of the other departments is what led to the other partners allowing me to create a subsidiary business. And by creating that subsidiary business, it's helped me greatly for creating my company now, where I provide advisory and coaching to startups and small businesses, consulting to corporations. And I also have a marketing agency arm with my team of 3 people, including myself. Much smaller than 200. I think it might even be like 250 now, much smaller, but much less stress as well.
And they do say it's not just all about size, right? Um,
Exactly.
and I really enjoyed the fact you brought up finance because, particularly in startups, there's a tendency perhaps to just think product. Oh, we just have a great product that everybody's going to love it and it's going to make lots of money. But there are a lot of nuances and complications to the business with the back office and operations in general. So I think that experience has been tremendous. But you're here in Japan, and the Japanese business culture can be unique and a little bit challenging for outsiders. I mean, your podcast, by the way, is amazing in helping people understand the nuances of the Japanese market. I'm a big fan. But how did you actually navigate these cultural differences and adapt your management style over the years? Have there been any particular watershed moments, perhaps?
Yeah, I think first off, so I am from Hawaii and the countryside, and so I did have a very strong Hawaii accent. So, and I had to, you might hear it from time to time. So I actually make an active effort to speak like I'm from the continental US.
Right.
But my first experience was going from where everyone's dark to where 90% of people are Caucasian. And that was my first experience adapting to a different culture. So even though it was the same country, let's say just I had to learn that let's say standard American English, and also just let's say maybe try to be less rough around the edges. But in Japan, so I think the first one was I made an active effort to hang out with Japanese people. In the beginning, I would say probably 80 to 90% of the people I've hung out with were Japanese. And I asked them a lot of questions like, is this normal? Or, like once a month, like, like, am I too aggressive? I really want to hear their experience of me as a Westerner and also follow up with, so how would a Japanese person typically behave in this situation? And I think for someone in Japan, that's the way to go. And as you stay here longer, you start to figure out what are the things where there are similarities between management style in, let's say, the West versus Japan, but you're kind of just feeling your way first. Then you figure out where the similarities are, where the differences at, and you adjust accordingly. To give one example, though, I think it is possible to get Japanese people to be more open-minded to taking risks and taking on new challenges. As we all know, Japanese are risk adverse. And it's the same way I would approach someone in the West who is maybe lacking confidence and kind of like in a fearful state. And that would be just letting them know that it is expected to make mistakes. And the most important thing from my end is I'm not looking at it at just this exact moment. I'm really thinking 2 to 3 years from now, where if you were to make these small mistakes now, I would be able to give you full responsibility of this. And so, from my end as your manager, you not learning how to take over it yourself for me is a much bigger risk and impacts me, would make me more angry than you making this mistake, small mistake in this area. And so I find that that is a common area, but unless you experience it yourself, you probably wouldn't notice it. And I think the other one too is, just setting clear goals, setting clear, just both foreign staff and Japanese staff. They want to know where the company is going to be 3, 6, and 12 years because they're betting their future on your company. So I think there's a lot of similarities in management. You just have to feel your way through it.
I appreciate what you're saying because I often hear, particularly comparing Japan and the West, how different they are. And I hate that narrative because it's not really helping. So your approach of actually trying to find the common points is extremely useful. Digging a little bit into your own experience and history, I mean, you were running the HR and operations of a company, then you decided to launch a new business subsidiary. Now you're running your own companies. What motivated you to take an even more entrepreneurial role and possibly start from zero, close to zero? And were there some key lessons that you learned during this process about yourself and about your career?
Yeah, so in my case, it's I was working for a company that works with the public sector. And I'm open to saying it, but I was in charge of all of the English teachers for Yokohama City, which is the biggest education unit in Japan, or it's the biggest, it's bigger than Tokyo because Tokyo is separated, but it's the biggest in Japan. And I pretty much did all the things that I could do without receiving more budget from my company. So I pretty much did what I had control over. And after 3 years, I raised the satisfaction towards the company from 2 to I think it was probably 3.8. So from 2% or 2 out of 5 satisfaction to I think 3.8. And I realized I did all I could do. So the only way I would have kind of full control would be to create my own company. And with this One Coin English, I did have 2 co-founders, And I guess kind of moving on, we did create something really good. We're all still really good friends, but it came to that I wanted control again. And I think in my case, personally, I discovered that I'm happiest when I have majority control, where I make or I do what I want to do. And so in that case, I'm probably not employable. And even if creating a startup, I'm at the state where I actually want to be the CEO now.
Which is
And
fair enough, right? I mean, you've had the experience, and I think what's interesting is you didn't start with that mindset. As you grew in confident experience, you got to that point. So that's actually very um, positive message out there to people that may not feel ready to be the CEO and running the company, that you can get there.
so it's definitely a journey. And I think for me, like if I had to create another startup, like say my first startup, I actually would make the same decision I made to create OneCoin English. And that is I had two co-founders and we're all experts in different areas of the business. The CEO was an expert in marketing and just running. It was his third business, and the other businesses were all over seven figures US dollars. So this was his third business, and so he knew what to do. And the second founder, he was a franchise advisor, so a consultant. So he would consult companies on how to become a franchise and make their franchise successful. So really scaling a business. And in my case, I've managed 150 full-time foreigners. Just based on probability, I've seen almost every HR problem or human problem that could happen. And let's say the recruitment was easy, the training was easy, the curriculum had an idea of how to do it. So like we were all skilled in different areas and we could all start running from day one. So we were able to go grow, like startup fashion, like, triple, 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 double, double, bootstrap, because we're all experts. And I think after 6 years, I think we had the revenues of a price Series B level company and or high Series A, Series B, purely bootstrapped in 6 years. We were all experts and we just took off. We knew what to do from day one. And I didn't have to worry about customer acquisition. I didn't have to worry about creating the service for the Japanese, even though I helped out with it. It's they owned their stuff, I owned my stuff, and we just flew. And one caveat is with startups, sometimes you're creating a new market or you're creating a service or a product that doesn't exist. In our case, we created a service, well, basically a low cost carrier for language learning, where we provided the same quality lessons as the big players for one third the price. And that was our key advantage. So I do have to put that caveat. We did grow quickly, but we didn't really have to do product market fit because we pretty much knew we had that from day one.
Nothing wrong with that. If anything, those want. And to delve a little bit into your experience in HR, what are some of the misconceptions of errors that job seekers make when they choose a company to work for, particularly when perhaps looking at transitioning into a different role or sector?
Yeah. So I think the big one that applies to I'll say just changing to a different company in general, either for new grads, mid-career, or even senior people is, I think in senior people, you don't have to worry about it as much, but especially junior and middle, they don't meet their manager when they join the company. So they talk to the recruiter, maybe you might talk to the CEO, but you don't meet your manager. And I think the most important thing that will impact your experience when you join a company is the manager more so of course, the company does make an impact, but you could have a bad manager within Mercury or Google. And so just because they're from a good company doesn't mean they're essentially a great manager. To really develop in your career, you need a great manager. And you can tell the difference in people who've worked for good versus great managers, particularly around self-awareness.
That's so true. Now you're working with businesses that are looking to enter the Japanese market. And of course, it's You have revenue targets and all that. But are there any other ways that you measure your success in this business line? And what is your greatest motivation driver?
So measuring my success, one would be in at the start of working with me, what is their revenue and how much of an impact I've had on their revenue. So that's for me, that's the main one because I need to pay off what they're paying me. If I'm not returning investment there, then let's say I can't in good faith ask them to continue with me. So that would be the first one. But the second one would also be the amount of aha moments. And so this kind of depends on the founder I'm working with. If I'm working with someone who's senior, very experienced, it's how many doors can I open for them? Meaning, it might have taken them 1 month to meet all these people, like, asking their network for introductions. But so, yeah, sorry. So, how I answer that is I'll say for more senior people, it's probably time saved through, like, just listen to this podcast episode, listen to this, check out this article, or you should do it this way, that way, and just really so they don't have to research, they don't have to tap into their network. I just give them all the information they need and they can take it from there. The other one, so I'd say one is saving time, generating revenue, and I'll say the third one is aha moments and creating self-awareness for the CEO. And sometimes this takes a lot of time. One example of this would be like how to create a quarterly plan. And in that, the team is confused, they don't know where the company is going, they're working hard, especially Japanese staff. They're working hard, but the CEO feels they could have done more. But the staff feel frustrated because they feel like they're working like 9 hours, 10 hours a day. But the CEO is just criticizing their work or not acknowledging them. But from the CEO is like, their work could be better. They could be doing so much more. And I would just come in and say, like, so how do you know they could be doing more? Like, what is this compared to? And the second question is, do you actually know what your staff are doing? And then I would usually make fun of the CEO saying, like, so how can you logically create expectations for people if you don't know how they're using their time or they don't know exactly what to do? And sometimes it takes like 6 months, sometimes it takes 1 year. But I help a lot of founders who want to scale past 1 million US revenue, but just because, they don't know how to run an organization, making them realize all these little things that if you just make this one change, it's going to help increase employee satisfaction or employee clarity so much more.
You've experienced a lot of industries and created interviewing systems and processes for clients and your own company. What advice would you give to individuals seeking to make significant career pivots or transitions, particularly when putting themselves out there?
Yeah, it's so I would say this is for the people who don't have a master's degree. So maybe they're more of a generalist. But one advice I would give them is before even applying for a job, and I think this kind of also goes back to, like, you're choosing a different role or sector. It's one is actually looking at the job description of companies that you want to work for. What specific skills could be technical, could be communication, could be software. So, what skills are they looking for? What level of experience are they looking for? And then trying to find those roles in your own company. And so, rather than trying to appeal to the other company to give you a chance, to give you a shot, which is much harder, it's try to get it within your own company first. An example of this would be, let's say that a company wants negotiation skills. And in your case, you could maybe, if you're in HR, maybe negotiate contracts, negotiate salaries, negotiate pay raises. Or other ones could be, yeah, asking to see if you could go on deals with customers and be a part of that negotiation. So that's my thought is one is you need to understand what they're looking for. And nowadays, there's just so many job ads out there that you could have a pretty good idea of what they're looking for what level of seniority. So, like senior, a middle manager, you can find all that information online, then try to get it in your current company or join a company that would give you that opportunity that will get you that next job that you're looking at.
Talking about skills, Tyson, what's been your approach to your own reskilling and upskilling over the course of your career?
Yeah, so my approach is probably not normal because I would say I'm a super generalist. And to provide context, what that means is I've done training, corporate training for more than 3 years. I've done management for more than 3 years. I've done recruitment for more than 3 years. I've created processes and ran operations for more than 3 years. I've done sales for about I'll say 2 years, or yeah, about 2 years. And I've done digital marketing for about 4 years. And I guess now doing financial simulations, I've done that for about 4 years. So I would say I'm the super generalist. And what I mean by that is, for a senior role, you often need like 7 to 10 years of experience. If you're lucky, maybe five. If you join like a startup, maybe 3 to 5 for a senior role. Because of my personality type is that I love the 80-20, where I'm just getting 80% of the benefit from 20% of the effort. So I start to get bored when it gets too deep. But what's this good for is I think I'm great for startups because whatever role you need until like a series B level, I can run it.
Fair
if
enough.
it's recruitment, I could probably run it past maybe to like I could run it past series B level. But in a startup, I can do whatever you want. I can do the sales, I can do the operations, I can do the marketing, I could do the HR, I can do the ops. I just need to find a technical co-founder and I can do the rest. But ideally, for me, I like teams of three is my personal bias. But so I guess my approach to reskilling and upskilling, it's so in my case, it's something more I do late in my earlier career. I just worked harder than everyone else.
Hmm.
so I so that's not that useful. But nowadays, especially with my consultancy, it's so let's I guess let's say what's the end goal. So I guess my goal is I'm not sure if I'm going to do it, but let's say if I create another startup, I would like to be either the CEO or the COO and potentially run the company until an IPO. And based on that, what are some of the skill gaps that I'm currently lacking? So I actually have a spreadsheet where I've listed out. So an example, this is a previous one, but previously it's I didn't really understand the difference between venture capital versus private equity. And so like I wrote that down as part of my knowledge gap. And so when I would meet investors, one is I would research the topic, of course, but I would also write down questions that I didn't understand. And when I meet people, even to this day, I often take a look at my skill gaps or knowledge gaps list and then ask them questions about that. So that's how I've been able to fill the gaps in my knowledge.
I mean, that's wonderful advice, by the way. I'd never thought about putting together a knowledge gap spreadsheet, but that's so intuitive. So thank you for that. And Tyson, you work a lot with CEOs about their strategy, coming to Japan, for example. But would you be able to share a specific story or moment from your own career journey that profoundly impacted your outlook on leadership and business strategy? And how did it shape your future decisions?
Yeah, it came back down to the I think when I worked in other companies and also like I felt that my own company as well, the first company, but I sometimes felt like, and I noticed it in employees, but it's seeing people work really, really hard, like, put their heart and soul into something, but then they feel sad because they don't feel acknowledged. And for me, that has been like a really huge insight that kind of just made me really understand. Even though I worked in a corporation, it was in Japan, there was no business planning. It was just get the contract every year and do what you can,
Right.
do what it takes to get it. And there was no strategy. But when I finally realized that just having like a quarterly plan or even a monthly plan that just says, this is what I expect you to do this month and these 3 months. Uh, If there's other things, like emergencies happen, let me know and we can redetermine the plan. But this is what I expect from you. And this is what I'm going to do to achieve this plan. This is what I expect from you to achieve the plan. Let's do it. And I just found how big of a difference that makes in building trust, but also clarity between, let's say, leadership and the team. Of course, this wouldn't be possible when there's like 5 layers, 6 layers. It gets way harder for that. But I think even at around 4 layers between, like, let's say, junior and senior, and even 5, I think it's still somewhat possible to do that. So just kind of being aware and that people have the time to do what it, and if they can't achieve it, really understanding, like, is it a skill problem? Is it, let's say, we have too much technical depth, like our processes, our staff are wasting time on processes, and then coming up with solutions to provide an environment that the staff and employees can succeed. So I think one thing I'm actually disappointed in is when I see like posts from CEOs or of on LinkedIn is I rarely ever see someone say, like, I got coaching, because I think everyone needs coaching, to be honest. I've been lucky
Agreed.
where I've been mentored on a weekly basis, even by people from other companies. But how many CEOs, founders don't seek coaching? And like you rarely ever see like I talked to my coach, I figured out this blind spot, I made this difference. And it's like you rarely see people post that. They mainly post like sales wins, or like maybe they hired a new employee, so they welcome that employee. But it's funny when you see companies who post like, oh, we hired this person, you never see them post a follow-up of how they've succeeded in the company. so
That's right. That's right.
so it's just like, yeah. And I'm not sure if I've mentioned this publicly, but I'm also receiving coaching myself once a month. Although I feel like I can pretty much handle any problem, the reason I have a coach is that I really want to uncover my blind spots. And it's not the role of my employees to tell me my blind spots because there is a power dynamic there.
Of
So I
course.
need someone external. And because I don't have a board, or previously when I worked in my company, I had a board, they could tell me when I'm underperforming. But I don't have a board. No one holds me accountable as a CEO. So it's my job to find someone who can hold me accountable. And I think my coach, in her case, she doesn't have the business experience that I do. But she does have a lot of business experience. But what she's good at is helping me challenge my thinking and actually reformulate my thoughts on a particular topic. And if I have a bias or if something's making me angry, it's kind of really figuring out, like, why is it making you angry? And so one area that she helped me deal with was with my company. I think we would have been national if it wasn't for COVID. Like
Okay.
we would have been national. I probably would have exited, be able to do some angel investment. But due to COVID, all our competitors had to close down like 3 schools, 5 schools, some closed down 30, 50. We're the only one who closed down one. So we suffered the least. But I had to cope with that because if it wasn't for COVID, I probably would be one of the most well-known, probably top 5, top 10 well-known Westerners in Japan.
But you already are.
Because
Let's be honest.
okay. But I would have exited. I would have had the money. I probably would have had the IPO, and then so she helped me cope with that loss because like I was like she picked up that I would always kind of complain that this is where I should have been. Yes, I've accepted it now. I still have to work hard, and that's probably and because I've accepted it, I've put a lot of energy into this new business, and like I felt like, okay, so although I didn't get the IPO or like the exit success or the M&A, like I didn't get the success, or I didn't get national, I didn't create a national brand. The alternative is to create a podcast and just support the community so much that everybody knows me, and that
And you
was
got
another
there.
way of achieving it. So, and yeah, so I think that increase, just my general well-being and happiness, accepting that. The other one too, it's just kind of also helped me process like what type of employee should I hire that works well with me? and just kind of talking to them like, yeah, I like doing this. And like I could have figured I had it, I did it, or I have a process for it. I figured out 80%, but they really helped me get to that 90, 95%, just being that open ear and helping me explore like what type of person do I want to work with. And I was able to find one, and hopefully the second one, I think the second one has the potential. I just need to see how it goes, but I've been able to find that, and my coach helped me in those areas. So even though I can do a lot of it myself, just having someone get me to that next step.
Wonderful. Tyson, thanks so much for your time, insights, and sharing your experience. It's been wonderful hearing from you. And I hope to be doing this again at some point.
Thank you so much, Maurizio.
This brings today's episode to an end. Thank you for listening. Until next time, stay cool, stay positive.